Let's be honest, being a lo-fi producer in 2026 can feel overwhelming. More music, more noise, more pressure, and not a lot of clarity. In today's episode, we're talking about what actually matters if you want to survive creatively, mentally, and realistically as a lo-fi producer without burning out or giving up.
You're listening to the Lofi Music Academy podcast, your go-to space for all things lo-fi. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into the world of lo-fi music production.
Hi, and welcome to the Lofi Music Academy podcast. I'm Spencer J, your guide through the chilled out, atmospheric world of lo-fi beats. Let's start with an honest question. If you're making lo-fi music right now, do you actually feel confident about where this is going? Not in a kind of dramatic end of the world way, but in a quiet, everyday sense. Confident that the time you're putting in is worth it. Confident that you're not falling behind. And confident that there's still space for you and your music. Because 2026 feels different. The landscape is louder, faster, more automated, and more crowded than ever. And for a genre built on subtlety, patience, and mood, that can feel a bit unsettling. Today's episode isn't about trends, hacks, or predictions. It's about grounding and about what actually matters if you want to stay a lo-fi artist creatively, mentally, and realistically in the years ahead. So let's get into it. Now, there's no avoiding it. There's more music than ever, more uploads, more playlists, more AI-generated tracks, and more pressure to be visible, consistent, and productive. And it's easy to look at that landscape and think, how am I going to survive this? But here's the quiet truth. Lo-fi has always existed in noise. It's never been the loudest genre, and it's never dominated any charts, and it's never relied on spectacle. What's changed isn't the essence of lo-fi, it's the volume surrounding the world of lo-fi. What still matters is the same thing it always has: feeling, atmosphere, honesty, and restraint. The artists who survive aren't the ones who shout louder, they're the ones who stay clear about what they're creating in the first place. One of the biggest sources of frustration for lo-fi producers is chasing an idea of success that doesn't fit the genre or the times that we're actually living in. Making it used to feel like a destination, a moment where things just clicked and everything made sense. But in 2026, the idea is really mostly unhelpful. Lo-fi careers don't explode, they accumulate slowly, quietly over years. Survival now looks less like a breakthrough and more like continuity, still creating, still releasing, still caring, without burning out or giving up. When you stop chasing a single defining moment and start building something that could last, your decisions change. You pace yourself differently, you protect your energy, and you stop treating every release like it's a referendum on your own worth. This is uncomfortable to admit, but really important. Most music producers who struggle in 2026 aren't struggling because they lack talent. They're struggling because they lack stability, emotionally, creatively, or structurally. Talent, that definitely gets you started, but stability keeps you going. That means building habits that don't depend on motivation, expectations that don't crush you, and systems that support creativity instead of draining it from you. The producers who survive aren't always the most skilled. They're the ones who learn how to stay regulated in a really unpredictable environment. One of the healthiest mindset shifts that you can make right now is letting go of scale. You don't need millions of listeners to survive as a lo-fi artist. You just need real ones. People who return. People who recognise your sound. People who feel something when your track comes on. A small engaged audience changes everything. It gives meaning to your releases. It softens the impact of low numbers. And it reminds you that music is still a human exchange, not just a data point. There's also something quietly empowering about knowing who you're actually making your music for. When your audience is small, you're not guessing. You start recognising names or messages, familiar listeners who come back again and again. And that familiarity builds confidence. Not because the numbers are big, but because the connection there is real. And that kind of connection changes how you create your music. You stop trying to impress strangers and start serving a mood, a feeling, and a shared space. Your tracks become more personal, more intentional, and often more honest because you're no longer chasing any kind of approval. You're building trust. And in many ways, a small audience is a creative advantage. It gives you room to experiment, to grow, to be imperfect in public. And in a genre like lo-fi, that intimacy is often what listeners are actually searching for, even if they don't know it or know how to articulate it. Let's talk about income. Streaming alone is rarely enough, and that doesn't mean you've failed. It just means the ecosystem works differently now. Survival comes from diversity, not hustling, stability. Multiple small streams instead of one big hope. But here's the key. Money should support your creativity, not control it. When every track feels like a financial test, joy can disappear fast. One of the hardest lessons for lo-fi producers is separating survival from validation. When money becomes the main proof that your music is working, every quiet month then feels like a failure. And that pressure leaks into the creative process faster than most people realise. Sustainable income in lo-fi usually looks really unglamorous: small payments, inconsistent wins, long gaps between notable progress. But when you zoom out, those small pieces all add up, especially when they're built around music that you actually enjoy making. The goal isn't to monetize everything, it's to create enough financial breathing room that your music doesn't feel desperate. When panic leaves the equation, creativity tends to come back on its own. Now this might be the most important part. Lo-fi attracts introspective people, quiet thinkers, sensitive creators, and that makes mental health not a side topic but a core one. Surviving as a lo-fi artist in 2026 means learning how to sit with uncertainty, how to release without obsessing, how to create without comparing. A lot of producers treat anxiety, doubt and creative fatigue as like personal flaws, things to push through or ignore. But in reality, these are just signals. They're information about how your current pace, expectations or environment might be misaligned. Lo-fi by nature asks for slowness, sensitivity. And when you force yourself into systems that reward constant output and comparison, something starts to break internally. Not all at once, but quietly over time. Learning to notice when your nervous system is overloaded is a career skill. And so is knowing when to stop scrolling, stop checking numbers, and reconnect with what you started making music for in the first place. Survival isn't just external, it's emotional. One of the cruel illusions of modern platforms is the idea that growth should be visible and fast. In reality, most meaningful progress, it happens slowly and quietly. Your skills improve, taste sharpens, confidence settles in. None of that actually shows up on a dashboard. Slow growth can feel invisible, especially when you're surrounded by stories of overnight success. But most of what makes you a better producer happens beneath the surface. Your taste evolving, your decision making improving. There's also a kind of resilience that builds up, only slow growth builds. When progress comes gradually, you're forced to develop patience and self-trust. You learn to continue without constant reward, which ironically makes you more likely to last. If you've been making music consistently for months or years, even without big external results, that's not stagnation, that's foundation. And foundations matter far more than spikes. So what really matters in 2026? Clarity over chaos, consistency over intensity, connection over scale, sustainability over speed. It's tempting to think survival means doing more content, more releases, more visibility. But for many lo-fi artists, survival actually means doing less, more intentionally. Choosing where to place your energy instead of scattering it everywhere. Clarity isn't loud, it shows up in quiet decisions. When you say no to things that drain you, when you stop copying paths that don't fit your life, when you allow your music to grow at its own pace. What matters now isn't being everywhere, it's being aligned with your values, your capacity, and the kind of life you want music to be part of. When those things line up, survival stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like a rhythm. this episode does one thing, I hope it reminds you of this. You don't need to compete with everyone. You don't need to keep up with everything. You don't need permission to move at your own pace. Surviving as a lo-fi artist in 2026 isn't about winning. It's about staying. And staying quietly, intentionally and honestly is far more powerful than it actually sounds. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review or sharing it with fellow music producers who might find it useful. Till next time, keep creating, stay inspired and remember, it's all about the vibe. Take care and see you in the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lofi Music Academy podcast. If you're ready to start making lo-fi music and want to go even deeper, grab your free guide. Discover the 6 essential steps to create a release-ready lo-fi track from scratch. Whether you're using budget gear in your bedroom or a small home studio, this guide will help you get that polished, dreamy lo-fi sound you're after. Just go to www.lofimusicacademy.com. Until next time, keep creating those laid-back vibes, and don't forget to subscribe for more lo-fi tips and tricks.